Okay, what I have here is a Athearn Genesis. It's a GP40-2. It came with Tsunami 2 sound from the factory. I've got the Soundtraxx current keeper plugged in. I like to go ahead and just solder all the leads on the board. This has not been permanently put together yet. But what I was going to document is the installation of the speaker. This is what comes from the factory. And this one, I also had gotten a GT or GP15-T, and it just had a little tiny shelf sticking out with the speaker on it. It didn't sound very good. So in another video I might show what I did there. It's more simple. But I'm going to have to mill this. And I thought I'd show what I was going to do here. So if you take the speaker leads off like I did, and there's 2 screws on top. You just wiggle that loose and it comes right off. And I've already gone ahead and I pried up on one side of the speaker to get that loose. It's just a little oval. But what I was wanting to do is 3 of these cubes. That's what I did on the GP15. And in the GP15 I aimed them down because there is a grill on the side of it. And I thought the sound would come out much better down here. The old factory speaker was firing up. And so when I put these in, I basically just put 3 of the minicubes together and moved the light wires out of the way and very lightly glued them to the top. Now this one has the fans on top, where the other one is just solid plastic, and that's probably why it didn't sound very good. So what I want to do is, I'm not going to be able to put all 3 in here, but I want to go ahead and mill this. It's got plenty of depth, so I'm not worried about that, but there's a little offset here that the old speaker sat on. So I was going to open that up, this little lip here, and probably take some of this end off too, because they don't quite, well, for one, they'll sit on top, but it's too high. And I already measured from the bottom up, and I've got 3/4 of an inch. It's the way it was from the factory. And I believe this is already too tall. So just kind of mill that off, and also those little spots down inside. These little guys here that the screws would hold the speaker in with, although mine didn't have any, because those will be in the way if I want to get those speakers down any lower. So we'll go ahead and mill that, and I just want to, I'm going to series all 3 of these. So you got your positive coming in, and then a little jumper lead, and then a little jumper lead, and then your negative coming back. And that's the same exact thing I did with the GP15. Alright, well, I've got the 3 of these glued together, and that's how it's going to look. Now, one thing I do on these, they come from the factory with a bit of an angle on the sides of the box, and It's called draft. It allows the plastic part to be injected easily. It's common practice. But what I do is, now that side's smooth, but the middle one and the two end ones, I just sand slightly to try to square it up some. I don't know if I can get that. I'm having all kinds of trouble getting this to focus. Yeah, you can see some gap between those. And I don't sand it much. Only about a third to a half of the way down. So basically what I've got here is, if this is, and I've exaggerated quite a bit, the draft of the speaker, what I do is I just sand off some of that. So this isn't here anymore. And I do mean some, you don't want to overkill it. And then the next speaker, the same thing, because if not, you've got these speakers being glued just at the very top edge, and it's just not as strong. So this way they kind of join somewhere about here and there. Anyway, it takes a couple thousandths out of the length of it as well. And like I said, about a third to a half of the way down. And I check it with a square just to make sure that I'm roughly squared up. Now, if it didn't have to go very deep, I'd be pretty close. But you can see that this is, it's just a little too long, but not much. Now, it does fit between the two grooves, but that step is what I got to take out. And then at the very end, I'm not sure which end, I got to take probably not, but several thousandths out, and that way it'll just drop right in that pocket. The other one, the GP40, I did sand the bottom flush because I mounted that with about 3 or 4 very, very small just dabs. I can make a little pool, CA, take your screwdriver and touch, and it wasn't much bigger than, I'd say, the head of a pin. That way if I want to replace them, and I'll do the same here, I'll probably use less than that. I can go in with a screwdriver or needle nose pliers and just gently give it a little twist, and it'll snap and pop right out. Like I said, I'll do another video on the GP15. It's already done, but that one was really easy. So I'm going to go ahead and mill this, and then we'll see what I end up with. Well, I just got done milling. It's been a while since I milled, but I've done a lot of it in the past. So I decided to go ahead and take more off the screw end. Now I'll go ahead and lightly sand this and clean it up so it doesn't have any sharp edges, but there's the pocket, and got the 3 speakers glued together. I just very lightly sanded the sides of the enclosure as well. And I'm probably going to put a little bit of styrene or something underneath here. See, it fits just right. So I kind of don't like, yeah, this thing doesn't want to focus. I kind of don't like how close the speaker terminals are to the metal itself. So, and it doesn't need to be that deep anyway, before the speaker sat up much higher. So I've got room to play with that. So I'll probably put a little strip of something on the very bottom. I just very lightly touched the bottom with the bit. That's why it removed the paint. But that's it. So I've got the speakers installed. I ended up using, actually it's just a railroad tie. Sanded it down just to get a little bit of height. Get those solder connections above the metal. I don't want that touching. So you can see that I've got yeah, positive, and then it just jumps and jumps, and then you got the negative coming over. So those three are run in series. It's probably, let's see, that'd be a 24 ohm load, so the amp is more than capable of doing that. It's much easier on the amp, actually. So my thought is it's going to fire up through the vents in the top of the locomotive. I went ahead and taped down the current keeper. That works pretty well. I tried capacitors before and it didn't do quite the job that the current keeper does. It does a much better job. You might be asking, why would I use electrical tape? Well, these little cubes, these aren't the mini ones. These are they're called minicubes, but it's 810154 minicube speaker. And like I said, it sits in there fairly lower, at least 1/10 of an inch lower than the factory speaker. They produce a lot more bass than I expected. So there's a reason for the electrical tape. One, it helps hold everything where I want it, but it's also a vibration absorber. And what I mean is, you put this back together and fire it up, and if you hear what sounds like distortion or vibration, chances are it's something on the locomotive. Now, the worst culprit of any of these locomotives, in my opinion, that's going to be vibrating is the sides of your plastic up against the frame. So when I put that on there, it's not a force fit, but when you slide it on, you can tell that the body is coming in contact with the backside of the electrical tape. You know, the consistency is kind of rubbery, and it helps absorb any kind of vibration that you'd have there. Now, I'm not saying that's the only place you'd have it, but that's a good chance you'd have it there. I did the same thing on the GP40, and it seems to work great. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this up in a minute here, make sure everything's working good, but just want to show you guys how that turned out. A mill in a case like this is just, this one took a little bit of work. Now sometimes it's not much, but something like this to try to Dremel would be almost impossible. It'd just be a nightmare, and it'd just be chewed to bits, and it would take quite a while. Okay, I think I had some settings under the equalizer tweaked a little bit. I wouldn't be able to tell you what they are, but I know it is a big advantage to go in there. I think the CV is 225, and I set it to custom, which is 7. Then go through there and just play with the different 7 bands that you're allowed to adjust, particularly in the lower end. So here it is starting up. So there you have it, and that's where the speakers would be. The factor one, I could see the magnet through one of these grills, and the new ones sit, like I said, a little bit lower than that, and it does pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with it. Like I said, I'll just tweak some of those sound settings and get the amount of bass I want. I will tell you that the volume is at half right now, and it's still that loud. So it's at 128 out of 255. So I hope you enjoyed it and learned something from this, and maybe you'll want to do something like that yourself. These cube speakers, I used to only put speakers in the cab. Now I can leave the cab intact with all its detail and put them in the back. Thanks for watching.